Welcome to the Financial Planners South Africa podcast, a show dedicated to driving the positive evolution of financial advice, specifically in South Africa. To join a global community of financial advisors, sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. Portfolio Metrics is thrilled to bring you this podcast in support of our common passion for people and the evolution of wealth management. Our global business links precision investment management to expert financial advice through partnerships and technology. Visual, interactive, meaningful, productive. 4 values underpinning AssetMap, a financial planning platform loved by advisors and their clients. This episode is proudly brought to you by Alan Gray. They say it's important to live for today. Although that might be true, we can't forget to plan for tomorrow. There's a lot of it left, after all. Alan Gray is an authorized financial services provider. Visit www.alangray.co.za to learn how we build long-term wealth for clients. Good afternoon, Russell Ho. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Awesome. Thanks, Louis. Thanks for having me. And it's a pleasure to be on your podcast or be one of your early guests on your South African podcast.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do with this podcast is definitely to promote the positive evolution of advice. And one of the first people that came to mind is Russell. And, just by looking at where he spends his time in terms of building his craft of financial planning, I think this conversation would be brilliant, just sharing your history in financial planning, what you're busy doing at the moment, and where we see the industry heading. So let's maybe touch on what you're doing at the moment. Tell us a little bit the practice that you're with and the type of clients that you serve.
Awesome. Thanks, Louis. And like I said earlier, once again, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm hoping what I share today that, can add some value to everyone that's listening. So currently now, just to give you guys a bit of a background, I've been 7 years in the industry. I still think that's a youngster in terms of how industry does. But I've been 7 years in the industry. I'm a fully independent financial or certified financial planner, and I work currently under Succession Financial Planners. And it's been an exciting journey, both ups and downs. Going through the years, I would say I've learned a hell of a lot, which I'm sure most of you have, especially if you've worked in our industry. And in addition to that, where I am now, within the last 3 years, which we are actually launching now within the next month or so, I've built a team of other professionals, accountants, attorneys, trust specialists as well, just kind of to build that coaching philosophy for all my clients. And when it comes to my clientele, I would say I basically don't discriminate against any specific client. And I focus a lot on helping, I would say, young or established professionals and a lot of, I would say, middle to high income families, that are just trying to make sense of where their money's going, isn't being used with intent and purpose for the lifestyle that they want to build.
Brilliant. You touched on some very interesting ideas there, servicing your clients as a team. And then also what I heard you say was, young professionals really resonate with the service that you offer. Can you maybe unpack a little bit, what this team looks like and how you're servicing those young professionals?
Okay, so I'm actually going to go a bit into kind of where the idea came from. So my second year of being in the industry, which was 6 years ago, it all started with that and also reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was probably my first book that I got into. And Louis, I'm kind of a book nerd in my off time. And I will kid you not, the first time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, like many of us, I just thought, well, basically he's telling me to buy property. And I'm in my early 20s. I can't even afford to buy my own new car or own property. So I don't know if that's going to work for me. And I read it the second time, and just so happens that coincided with it connected with an experience I had with a client, which was that I started realizing and finding that clients had a lot of problems outside the financial advisory space in other fields of their life that needed assistance or they needed help or needed some form of coach. And in addition to that as well, I found that if I could just put the right team, almost sort of like build my own Avengers, I guess you could call it, right? That I could add extreme amounts and extensive amounts of value to my clients in more than one way or another. And it just so happens, coming back to the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, I read it for the second time and I actually learned something properly this time, which was that one of the gems he mentioned was that he spent 3 months job shadowing his rich dad. And in the beginning, he couldn't understand why his rich dad was paying so many fees or, paying for services of an accountant, an advisor, a property manager, a banker, a lawyer, and so forth. And he thought it was a waste of time. But by the end of the 3 months, because he got to sit in on those meetings, he realized that his rich dad wasn't paying them for their services or technically advice or for them selling anything. It was just to have that board of coaches in his corner, so that whatever decision he makes with regarding to his life, and his business and the empire that he was planning to build, he could ask each and every one of them, I want to do this or make this decision. Like, what do you guys think? Is it good or bad? And don't tell me in your technical field jargon. Tell me in simple English. Is it a good decision? What do I need to be aware of? And those two concepts those two ideas connected for me in that second year. And I was like, you know what? For the next couple of years, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm going to start building, networking, and looking for the right people to build this team. And now within the last 3 years, I've been fortunate enough to find those right and correct individuals that not only share the same work ethic, the mentality, and the coaching philosophy, but care about the client just as much as I do. And we're actually we're launching within the next month. And it's made up of, we've got a chartered accountant, there's 2 tax practitioners, including myself for South African tax, and the third one's an offshore tax specialist and trust. We've got an attorney and a conveyancer in the team. We've got a real estate agent or property specialist as well. And then we've got a medical aid specialist. So it's basically offering this whole collective group of coaches that you have access to, when you work with us.
That's great. I love that idea of the Avengers team that's got your back. That's, kind of distilling what you need at the right time that you need it. For a lot of advisors, they struggle picturing the actual value that you bring to the relationship, right? Be it through the fees that we earn or the products that we have in front of clients. How do you see that value that you bring to the relationship, given the fact that you're part of this bigger team?
So I think the value, when you look at or you think about value bringing to your client or your customers, and it doesn't have to only be for advisors, I think within any industry, right? What I've learned since day one being in this game or in this field is that always put yourselves in the shoes of your client. So think, whether it's the advice you give, how you position yourself, how you approach clientele, always think like, if I was a client, how would I see this? Because 9 times out of 10, and I'm sure Louis, you can agree, and you've also seen it as well. Most of us make the mistake of thinking, oh, I like this approach, or I like this product, or I like this, the way we do things in business this way, because I like it, but technically do your clients favor or like it, or does it appeal to them? So that's always the first step. And then when it comes to value, especially with technology today and, especially in our industry, your value's got to be more than just the product or service you offered. Because with technology nowadays, you can buy almost everything online. So, especially in our field, and we've seen it a lot happen within this last year to 2 years, our value is being more scrutinized now than ever. People are actually asking, I'm paying you a fee or advisory fee, what am I getting in return? And what I realized, which I'm not sure a lot of you are aware of, is that the value or the advantage that we have is, think about it. People have a bad perception about the financial advice industry. They think, oh, we're all policy sales when you sell insurance and all that. And yes, you can see that from a negative point of view. It's depressing, it's bad to hear that. But you can also see it from an optimistic point of view. Like, that's actually pretty good, because that means for most of customers or most of my clients, the expectation before they meet me is So if I can give them a completely new experience and delivering or value proposition that's up just imagine how that's going to, shock them, and also in turn, generate more business, because they would tell all their friends and colleagues of like, I went to Russell or Louis. I thought he was just going to sell me life insurance. And instead we never talked about product whatsoever. And he's completely different to any advisor I've dealt with. you've got to go see them. And they might be thinking, but my advisor or the person I'm dealing with, all they do is sell insurance to me. I haven't experienced what so-and-so experienced. Maybe I should see if I can go and see their advisor. So coming back to the value thing, it's more about without the product or two, what actual human value are you adding to your clients? If something goes wrong, or if there's any big lifestyle decisions they make in their life, you want to make sure that they can talk to you. I always have it with my clients that, yes, I can sell you insurance or investment products, but that's kind of the byproduct of my whole advice philosophy. You buy more into me as a person because when things go bad, whether it's the markets or something in your life, or it could be a good thing, you transition into a new job or you want to go work overseas. 9 times out of 10, yes, you can Google that. But the biggest problem is like sifting through Google and saying like, okay, which is fake news, which is nonsense, what is the legit information? And most of the time, a lot of that information is very generic. So then it comes down to the next issue. It's like, okay, I know what they're saying here, but A, I don't understand it because it's in jargon, in financial jargon. And B, so how does this exactly apply to my scenario, my situation? And that's where we add value in as advisors, is looking at the client as them individually, not as a number, and saying, okay, you're making these big decisions now going forward in your life. These are the things that are going to apply to you, and these are the questions you need to be asking yourself. And this is what can happen in terms of the outcome. And I'm here to make sure that we get the best outcome for you.
That's great. I mean, you've said to me before, we need to raise the bar in this industry. And what comes to mind is just the fact that the bar at the moment is still quite low. And hopefully, over time we can increase that bar. And, the pun that you're also a weightlifter comes to mind. So there's a lot of bars included in this. And I know that you're training for an upcoming event. What role has fitness played in your life as a financial advisor?
Yeah. So fitness plays a huge role to me. And for most of you that don't know, me and Louis are quite close. I've shared this with him already. But it's probably a pivotal part of my life in the sense that it started also from with a work mentality. Is when I started in the industry, right, as a really young lighty back then, fresh out of varsity. I kid you not, a lot of the senior advisors that I met, the first thing they told me is that, no one's going to trust you with your money because A, you're not gray or bald, B, you're not old, and C, you don't have a poop or a belly. So who's going to trust their money with you? And for the first year, I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. I'm assuming all those factors, accumulate to some form of wisdom that appeals to the client. But then I eventually started thinking, but then if I have, especially the book or the beer belly, to me, I was like, what happens if I have a heart attack or I die before my client, and then I can't take care of my client's interests and their lives. So I started thinking from the same perspective that I believe Sandro Forte mentioned it once on Francois' podcast, was that when he started, he had the same problem or he had the same experiences, and he started seeing that, one of my value offerings to my client is that I'm going to take really good care of myself because my value add to you is longevity. I'm going to try and take care of myself so I can live longer to take care of you. And that became one of my mentalities as well. That, in addition to the fact that for most of your listeners and viewers that are listening now, weight's always been a big thing. So I used to always be the chubby kid through high school, and I used to weigh 100 kgs of pure fat, and I was like really overweight. I couldn't even run a mile or kilometer in South African terms. And that's why health also became so important to me, because it was in my early years of working, it was slowing down and depriving me of energy that I could be putting towards my clients and their needs. And over time, I started realizing that working out and staying fit was not only just for the sake of working out and, keeping the weight off, but more so of a mentality outlet, because we have really stressful jobs. It's an outlet for stress so that your mind is clear by the time you finish the workout, and you can take on whatever obstacles the world throws at you on that day. So that's what it became to me. It became more than fitness. It became like free therapy to me, in a sense that it's my stress outlet. Once I get my workout done every day, I'm ready for whatever the day throws at me, So that's why it's more to me than just fitness and lifting weights.
And, and through that, you reinvented yourself, right? So I can see the presence that you bring to these conversations, which is just, it's refreshing. I want to talk a little bit about the early days in your career as an advisor. For a lot of people, starting out is really tough, especially those first couple of years. Maybe we can just jump back 7 years
Sure.
to Russell that's starting out. Like, how did that happen? What were you doing? And tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so yeah, sure, more than happy to share. So, like many of you, I started out about 7 years ago, did my BCom and my postgrad in financial planning at Nelson Mandela University now, it's called, I think that's the new name, and graduated, and then I was applying to go work in the industry, and I initially applied to, a few of the asset managers like your Allen Grant Coronation. They told me, look, qualifications are good, got good marks, but you have no field experience. So then the next best option I tried applying was at Old Mutual and Old Mutual Wealth, and they accepted me off the bat and started working there. What shocked me, and that probably was the first shock that a lot of us as planners experience when you get into the field, especially when you've gone the educational route, was that, and not specifically Old Mutual, it happens everywhere, but I was shocked to find out I was overqualified for the job, And I kid you not, they told me I was overqualified because I had a BCom and a postgrad in financial planning, and I was still pursuing the certified financial planner designation at that point. And back then, which I will say the industry has come a hell of a long way, is that back then, the basic criteria for hiring as a financial advisor was matric, sales experience, and the drivers. No financial qualification whatsoever. I was just like, this doesn't make sense to me. So I started working, and, in the beginning as well, I used to take offense to people saying, oh, but your degree is just a piece of paper and doesn't mean a lot. And over time, I learned, yes, it can go both ways. Yes, it can be just a piece of paper if you don't use the knowledge you obtained in varsity practically. And if you are able to use that knowledge, it's actually an advantage. And in my early years, that's also where, coming back to what I mentioned earlier, I would say as a young planner, I also got demotivated like many young planners that enter the industry where, you go into this field and you want to change lives and you're going to do big things, and earn a lot of money. And then you start as a financial planner and the first thing you hear people call you is like, oh, you're a broker or policy salesman. And that's like a huge knock. You're like, I studied so hard and all that. And for me in the beginning, it was tough because dealing with that mentally, that was kind of demotivating in the start. I only started realizing later that, yes, it's, our industry's got a negative perception, but that also just means how low the bar is set. And if you can deliver something of greater value, above that, it's going to set you apart, dramatically in the field. And that's how I was picturing it. So in my early years, when I started there, and I was there for 3 years, with full commission based, so no salary. And my first year was actually, I was just interning. So it wasn't even a permanent contract. They were like, look, you can come in once a month. That's the minimum you need to come in. And you do your targets kicking from June. Yeah. So I was there for the first 6 months. I didn't have targets, but I guess it's also because of my family upbringing and work ethic. I still treated it as if it was like the last job I had, especially from my parents' side. So I came in at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I would leave 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening every day. And, the guys couldn't understand, why are you working so hard? Like you're not even getting paid properly. You full commission based, right? And it was more so of the opportunity for me. The way I saw it was like, okay, I've learned all this book knowledge in varsity. I want to see what people actually do in this field, and, there were obviously the people doing good things, people doing bad things. And I saw the pros and cons of each. I was like, okay, I'm going to take the good things out of each source and also learn that what's not working and try and take a different approach. So a good example, which most of us experience, is that, a lot of us aren't, people savvy or people skill savvy, including myself. I was introverted. I kid you not, for many of the listeners and viewers out there, I was shy back in varsity. I didn't like doing public speaking events or talking to people. I was the guy in the corner of the room waiting for someone to come talk to me, not the person going forward and networking or meeting with people. So it definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone in the sense that I was thinking, okay, a lot of these guys are cold calling clients. And again, thinking from the mindset of a customer, I get a cold call and someone says, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'd like to meet with you and talk to you about your finances. Like, you just called me from a random number. I don't know you from a bar. So you want to look into my finances that I don't even tell my brother, my siblings, my parents about, but you want to come and look at my finances. What makes you think I'm going to trust you? So that was the first thing I noted. And secondly, I was like thinking, I need to get in front of these people that I'm going to try and get as clients. So that was also the biggest challenge that a lot of us as advisors have, is finding clients or finding prospects. So I started thinking, you know what, right? There's a lot of these expos and events that are happening in the city. Bridal expos, home expos, kids expos, you name it, right? But there's no financial expo or finance expo, right? What happens if and I did it at my own cost, so the company wasn't paying me. It's like, what if I go and set up a store that has nothing to do with finance? Maybe has some of our mutual branding, but has nothing to do with finance. Like there's a chocolate fountain and some lucky draws, and all on my cost. But the opportunity I would get out of that is two benefits. A, it's going to force me to develop people skills because I'm an introvert, so I'm going to be forced to talk to people. And B, when I talk to people, it's just an opportunity to make conversation with them and sort of maybe bring in something they've seen in the newspaper back in those days, like in the Herald, of like the budget speech or something they saw about the economy. I'll bring it up along the conversation. And the third benefit that I also got out of that, when they enter the drawer and I've bought this report and I phone them the next day, my icebreaker and my trump card was phoning them and saying that, hi, especially at a Broad Expo, hi, I was the Chinese guy in the tux, by the way, that you were talking to about your wedding plans. And I'm just following up because you said we had a nice chat and you mentioned, you're struggling with your taxes or your retirement planning. And I was just hoping we could have a follow-up session or meeting where, we can have a proper discussion and I can really try and help you with that. And I kid you not, for those that don't know, there's not really many or any Chinese people within our industry. It was my icebreaker because the moment I said that, they would be like, yes, of course. Like, how can I forget you? Like, I remembered you and you were talking so much. Yes, sure. Let's have a meeting. And just by having that, not only that I bought people skills, but in addition to that, I didn't have to do any cold calling. I kid you not, I tried it for the first week when I started. I hated it. I was like, this is not going to work for me. And going that route was just so much more beneficial because people knew who I was. They saw me. There's more trust. Like, sure, come, let's have a cup of coffee at my place and we can talk finances. And I would say just going through that process, yes, it cost me money, but the return I got was higher. I had a higher, I would say, hit rate when it comes to bringing clients. I'd say about 95% of those contacts I made at those expos became clients in the end. So yeah, that was my early journey,
Brilliant. I can see that how you really break down financial planning into these bite-sized, digestible things and make it easy. And, even how you unpacked these challenges and said, okay, well, let's look at both angles. What are the negatives and what are the positives? What can I be using in this situation? So you've been at Old Mutual for a couple of years. How do you keep yourself motivated in that role to just continue growing?
Yeah, so definitely. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges a lot of us as advisors face is, how do you stay motivated? Because at the end of the day, you're your own entrepreneur and business owner. So everything's dependent on you. And most of the stuff or hard work that you do, no one else is going to see except yourself. So how I kept motivated, I will say I was also fortunate enough, is that within my second year, I kind of got my first mentor within the industry, and his name was Glenn. And he was a top advisor, a really top advisor, I think number 2 within Old Mutual nationally. And why I resonated so much more with him is that I went into that mentorship program with him, and it was only supposed to be 6 months to a year, and it turned into a 3-year kind of relationship. And even now, I still keep in contact with him, where basically he showed me that, yes, Russell, there's a lot of bad advice or bad advisors out there, but there's good guys like us that are doing things right. And he showed me the way of how he was teaching or handling, high net worth clients, and all they came to him was for his advice. And that helped motivated me, in addition to, me thinking from the point of, I've always thought this way. It's like, how can I always constantly add value to clients? How can I learn? How can I do things better? And it was only after my second year of working at Mutual, my mindset kind of shifted to the sense of, whatever experience you have, whether it's good or bad, try and take something away from it and reinvent yourself for the following year. And that's what I did, and I would say that's what kept me motivated up to this point, is just trying to think how to reinnovate the way we do things. And it was all stemming as well from the whole kind of point or issue when most of us first start, is like, most financial planners are seen as a broker or policy salesman. Okay, that's fair enough. And most of the people that say that have experienced bad advice, or they haven't really gotten proper advice before. So how do we change that? What can we do now? What can you as an individual do to change that perception of that one person that over time will expand to more and more people? Because not only will they refer people to you, but they'll keep telling like their friends and colleagues and family about the different experience or what you're doing differently. And yes, you might not see a big impact in the beginning, but do it for a couple of years and you can ask a lot of the really good advisors and successful planners out there. It ends up compounding just like any other investment. Yeah, so that's what motivated me up until this point to stay in the ring and keep doing what I'm doing.
So it's that incremental growth, how your brand contributed to be able to be approachable to your clients, to simplify the way you're doing things, and then just trying to have the patience and not, lose steam. You've been really successful in terms of connecting with clients and other people in the industry through LinkedIn, and that's something that's come up a couple of times. Can you maybe explore a little bit, what your strategy is there and how that's impacted your business?
Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy to explain my strategy. So first and foremost, no secret, there actually is no strategy. If you guys were expecting something big. I will say, I think I'll go over what I wish I'd done differently. So what I did in the beginning of LinkedIn, I only started using LinkedIn in my second year when I was at Mutual, so 6 years ago, properly, is that in the beginning, I made the mistake that most of us make. You start treating it like Facebook. So I treated it like Facebook. I was like, you know what? Whether we have a mutual benefit connection or whatever, I'm just going to connect and friend all of you. And then a few months down the line, I realized I have like 3,000 or 4,000 connections and there's no value whatsoever. So it's just quantity, not really quality, and eventually I sat down one weekend and I cleared it all out. I sifted it down and I had the mindset or mentality of like, Russell, see this LinkedIn platform network as people that you actually are meeting with on a day-to-day or regular basis in person. Yes, it's online, but see it as it's your own circle of network and people that you can share with in person. And I sifted down my network, cleared it all out, and I went back down to, I think it was 1 to 200 connections. And that was my first step. So don't treat it like Facebook. Really look at people that are adding or, making differences within your industry, and also kind of niche it down to like, what type of people do I actually want to connect with? I don't want to just connect because of your title. That's a stupid reason to connect with a person. It should be more like, I'm connecting with you because I've seen some of the content you put out. It relates to me and I find it really interesting. And I find we can share experiences and thoughts that are mutually beneficial. So coming from that, that's the first step. The second thing that I started doing, which just so everyone knows, I also made that mistake in the early stages, was when you try to, I would say, look for mentors or you want to get something out of this, person that you just connected with. A lot of us do it completely wrong. We go with the asking answer without even building some form of rapport or relationship or value with that person. We make the mistake of going to ask first, right? And a good example is a lot of young people, even I made the mistake. It's like asking senior people within our industry, like, oh, can you mentor me? Can I job shadow you? Can you share some thoughts, right? And this person, again, hasn't built a relation with you, doesn't know you from a bar. So I've just literally accepted your connection invite on LinkedIn. But you asking me for my precious time and me to share my knowledge or wisdom with you, with the probably high expectation that I'm getting nothing out of this. And it's not beneficial to me. It's mainly just benefiting you. And it's a bit selfish in that sense. So that's a mistake a lot of us make. And what I started doing more often before I would go and ask for something, and I've mentioned this, I would say term or concept to you before, is in a sense filling up that goodwill bank account. You know, it doesn't have to be money. It could be just your time and your thoughts on something. So a good tip I gave in another podcast was about, you know, when you want to connect with someone, and that's the beauty of LinkedIn. There's no restrictions. You can connect with anyone basically, is that look at the posts or articles that they are commenting on and share your thoughts or insight on it. You know, if they've commented on an article, reply to their comment and say, that's a good point. I was seeing it from this point of view, you know, and this could be of value. That coupled with other ideas of like sending them, you know, other articles or content related to what they've commented on, just to help them, is a way of, you know, I'm giving this to you without expecting anything back. And I kid you not, like you've mentioned now, I've been quite successful or blessed on LinkedIn. I still think I'm in the early stages, but I am grateful for all the opportunities that have come my way. And I kid you not, I think there's still a long way for me to go, or lots of room for improvement. But what I'm experiencing or getting back now has been due to the last 6 or 7 years of me just giving back to people without expecting anything back. And now, you know, within this last year, I've been blessed and fortunate where people have asked me, including you, for podcasts and interviews and things like that. And I think it's all coming back to go with a giving hand without expecting them back, and it'll come back to you in the future, you know. And I always try, don't do it as a once-off thing. I always try and always give back or fill out the goodwill tank more from my side so that it's benefiting the other person more. And that's how, you know, it's come back to me, or, you know, other opportunities that come my way without me asking for it.
That's so true. Hey, this idea of patience just keeps on coming up. You can't expect this to be a quick fix. You know, you need to be putting in the time and the effort to build your network and actually, like you're saying, deposit into that bank of goodwill, you know, give away without the expectation. And at some point, you know, if making sure that you're in the industry long enough, that'll come around and come back to you.
Yeah. This idea, and if I may just add, if I may just add what I forgot to mention is sincerity and authenticity matter 100%. You could say, yeah, it's online, but people can still see through you, whether it's online or in person. So sincerity and authenticity matter 1,000%. So always come from that point.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. You mentioned while discussing this, you know, that you would tell the younger Russell this, or you would things that you would do differently. What would you tell younger Russell, you know, 7 years ago, that's starting out, kind of where you are now?
So if I was talking to my younger self, and it's ironic you mentioned this because I was actually picturing this thought or idea, I kid you not, like beginning of this year when I was doing like reflections on my goals for the year. And probably what I would tell my younger self if I was talking to him back when he just started into the industry, it's like, it's going to be one hellish of a ride. It's going to be hell of a hard, and there's going to be low points, but you are going to grow so much more from those low points, and you're going to learn so much that eventually in the end, it's going to be, the reward is going to be worth it, you know, and the feeling is going to be worth it. And kid you not, like, you know, like I said earlier, as an entrepreneur and business owner as well, aside from a financial planner, we go through highs and lows, you know, both personally and professionally as well. And we learn so much from it. And I think that's what also helps us develop our why are we industry. So yeah, I would say that's what I would tell myself is like, you know, prepare for the highs and lows, but just know that you're going to learn a hell of a lot and it's going to be all worth it in the end.
It's so true. Hey, just know that it's coming. It's almost like preparing a client for market correction. You know, we can guarantee that at some point it's coming. At some point you'll have, it won't all just be peaks in your career. There'll be lows. Would you be comfortable sharing some of those lows with us and, you know, what your takeaway is from them?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I'm an open book. I'm more than happy to share. There were probably 2 lows for me, in my career. And it was also to do with like personal experiences that I'm more than happy to share with you and the audience. So I kid you not, like the first low that I experienced in my career. And this was like the early days before I actually discovered my why or my passion and for why I'm in the industry. It was probably in the year 2017. So I had just left, beginning of that year, I had just left Old Mutual on the recommendation of also Glenn, my first mentor, to go and explore the independent space and join Succession Financial Planners and become an independent planner. And it was just to expand my scope of ways I can advise and help clients, right? And it was also one of my lowest years because back then, even though, yes, I did have the same focus on really helping clients, I didn't fully develop that wow, that fire, should I say. And I made the mistake, like many, of almost falling into the area of like, I'm going to chase money this year. I'm going to chase money or monetary gain, and I'll be able to earn more and it'll be good, right? So that year, I kind of hit a low point because my work-life balance went out the window. So I stopped exercising and go to the gym. I put on 20 kgs of weight. I was back up to almost close to 100 kgs again. And I was working in and out at the office. I would take, I kid you not, I would take casual clothes, like my jeans and my t-shirt, to the work. And at the office, after 5, I'll go and change in the bathrooms, and then I'll continue to work for another 2 to 3 hours. And I would do the same on a Saturday and a Sunday. And eventually I got so tired. I guess I could even say like I almost hated my job at that point, because what made it worse, and this was like kind of when I discovered like, the dark side of like social media. What made it worse was like I was comparing my life at that point to other friends and colleagues that I studied with. And what you see on social media, it's all the nice stuff. You see your friends buying houses, nice cars, traveling, and here you are struggling your butt off in this office by yourself, working by yourself, no one else to help you. And, I got to such a low point within that 2017 year. I was considering, I kid you not, like quitting the industry. And I remember that even the one time I was talking to Corbus about it, and he was like, also like, Russell, you need to find your wow, your passion for why you're in this industry, and that's going to open your eyes more, and I gave it some time, worked a little bit longer, and I came so close to quitting of like almost like, I'm going to go teach English overseas because they're earning so much more than me. And again, it was coming back to the idea of like chasing money. And my mom back then, I was talking to her about it, and I said to her, look, I'm looking at quitting. I can be earning more as an investment banker if I go work in Joburg, or even I could go travel the world and teach English and I'll get paid better than what I'm experiencing now. And my mom back then said like, you might not see it, but you don't realize like how much value just knowing how to manage money is helping others. And you can't see it now. And I don't want you to regret it later. So if you don't mind, I would say like, stay in it just for the remaining of the year and try it out again next year in the new year in 2018. Try it for one more year, because this was like, we were having this talk in November, December of 2017. She was like, I know you're unhappy, but trust me, just try it for another year. And also just think about it from a point as you experience it now in this new upcoming year of like, think about it from this way. Do you want to just be remembered for someone that makes a lot of money, or do you want to be remembered for someone that actually helps others and makes an impact in the lives of others? And I didn't fully understand it back then, but I said, okay, I'll try for another year. And she also said like, look, at the end of 2018 or this upcoming new year, if you still don't like it and you want to go teach English or go move to Joburg, I'll support you. If it's just for the money, I'll support you, whatever makes you happy, but just try for another year. So I said, okay, cool. I'm going to do it for another year. And that 2018 year was my second, probably one of the toughest moments in my life, I would say, personally and professionally as well, is that, and it also, but in a way, the good thing that came out of it is like, it lit up my why, or my passion for why I'm still here today and why I do what I do and why I'm so passionate about really helping others when it comes to like financial advice and money. So to give your audience kind of like a backstory, and my family never had any illnesses before, but give your audience a backstory. Start off with January, end of January 2018, my dad starts getting shortness of breath, literally walking 2 feet from one table to the other. And he's a 2 Oceans marathon runner. So we were shocked or surprised. His doctor came back from leave, checked him out, and he said, you need to go and see my colleague immediately now, who's a cardiologist, because you had a mini heart attack. And went and go check the cardiologist. Cardiologist says, your heart's in bad shape. You need to have a quadruple bypass because 95% of your blood vessels are clogged. This is for a 2 Oceans marathon runner that runs marathons every year. So that was the first blow. And to make matters worse, he didn't have any medical aid or insurance cover, and thankfully my parents were big savers. So we were trying to get in through referrals of the doctors to government hospitals and get it sorted. We knew the risk was that the waiting time would be the biggest risk, because if my dad had another heart attack, there's a good chance he won't survive. So we took that chance, because we couldn't afford private healthcare. Then another 2 months went by. So January, February, March, early to be on March, out of nowhere, my closest uncle and also closest brother on my dad's side to my dad, got diagnosed with brain cancer. He got a brain tumor. Also completely healthy, never had any illnesses before. And that was a lot to deal with as well, because now we've got families on both sides, both in different cities, trying to tend to each other or comfort each other. And if that wasn't enough, then like beginning of April, I don't know, where my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer and a tumor in the liver. So dealing with all of that, and my younger brother was still at varsity studying. So we had family come down, but all the responsibility of the household and everything else fell on my shoulders, coupled with the fact that I was still working and advising clients on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, none of my family had any medical aid or hospital plan cover. They just had some form of savings, and we were going through government hospitals. And also, in between client meetings, I was literally taking my mom and dad to like all their chemo and the doctor visits and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a lot to deal with. And, unfortunately by August that year, my uncle had passed and my mom had passed. So only my dad came out of it alive, survived and fully recovered. But just going through that experience was, I would say, a hellish ride. And we never had any chronic illnesses in our whole family. There was nothing wrong with our genetics or anything like that. And we would always say like, that stuff never happens to us. It happens to other people, but it will never happen to us. And boom, in 2018, it happened to us 3 times, And I think just going through that experience, and just so happens the previous year, I fixed up my mom and dad stuff, like the financial plans and stuff. But yeah, going through that experience made me realize I was on the brink of quitting. But thank goodness, like my family, are not to be, arrogant or anything, but thankfully I had some basic financial planning or know-how, how to sort out finances and get all the plans together. And if we didn't have those plans together, or if I wasn't there to advise the family and the extended family, we'd be in such a mess right now. And I was just thinking, for my clients, that's actually why I'm there for. They don't have access to that advice or that planning. And imagine if they had to go through something like that, not necessarily always being a bad event like that, but, the good events or any big decisions in life. Imagine they don't have someone in their corner to help them through that. How would they survive? And that's what kept me in it. And after that, taught me to be more grateful and appreciative of like the things I have. And I was like, I can't see myself leaving this industry anymore, because in a way it'll be like I'm abandoning my clients for all the upcoming events that might happen in their lives. And I want to at least be there so that they know if anything happens, Russell's there for me, and that's kind of fueled my passion, and it reignited the fire in me for why I do what I do to this day.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Russell. You can really see how you've taken yet again a difficult challenge, a serious life transition for you and your family, and actually turn that into your purpose. That's now fueling the drive moving forward. And it really shines through in everything you do. Thinking a little bit into the future, like where do we see this industry heading? Like what is Russell up to? Like what does the practice of the future look like? I know you spend a lot of time thinking of the future and sharing that knowledge. I'd like us to maybe discuss some of that as well.
Awesome. So I think there's a lot of big changes coming up for our industry going forward into the future. I think it's probably like what we've mentioned before. It's going to be less focus on the products that a financial institution offers, and rather like, okay, if I'm going to an advisor for advice, first and foremost, is that person legit and credible? Not just from what I hear, but I want to know on a social media base, are there good things about him? I always mention to people within the industry or to our colleagues and friends that you might not believe it, but people are Googling you now. And it's happened to me numerous times from new clients that approach me, even though they were referred to me by existing clients. They Googled me first. The same way we Google restaurants. When we want to go try out a new restaurant, we try and Google first, see what are the reviews. Is the food good? What is the prices? Things like that. So I think the first thing is realizing that we are going to be Googled more into the future. It might even get to the point of, especially overseas, where everything is now, the biggest trend is like voice. So imagine another big trend is like to build up your social brand and status, because the next trend that might come actually is voice on the basis of, if someone or customer says to Alexis, Alexis, find me a financial planner in South Africa, or find me a financial planner in Cape Town or Port Elizabeth or Quebec, for us. You want to make sure that your profile comes up, basically. So I think being searchable in Google online is a really big thing that's going to come in the future. And secondly, when clients see you, right, and they meet you, they coming back to it again, they're not coming to you for a product. They want to know, okay, if I buy into Louis or Russell or any other advisor, what am I getting from you as a person and as a human being that I'm not going to get through a DIY investment app or a robo advice to, what am I actually getting for you? And also, is it not a one-time thing? Is it a lifetime thing? Because I would like to have a long-term mutually beneficial relationship with you. I don't want it to be a quick fix, The advice that we give, I think, is becoming more important of like, it's not just to help you now. I'm here to help you now, the next 6 months, in the next year, next 5 years, next 10 years, till you basically die or your legacy passes on. And I think that's what a lot of advisors need to be focusing more is like, what is the value proposition? And always keep reinventing it. But what is the value that I'm adding to my clients, not just today, but for the future? And am I making enough time to work on it and improve it so that I'm always relevant and I will always be there to add more value so that 10 years from now, I'll still be in demand? And I think coming back to that as well, that's one of the biggest benefits I've learned from this journey as a financial planner is that it teaches us to be problem solvers for our clients. And that's what clients are coming to us for. They're not coming to you just to buy a life insurance policy or a retirement product or an investment product. They're coming to you because they have a certain money problem, and 9 times out of 10, that money problem is linked to a problem that's affecting their livelihoods. So I'm coming to you as a client so that you can give me peace of mind. So I don't have to worry about that stuff. So I think that's where the advice industry is going more towards. And, we've seen it a lot. I think it's specifically also going with the whole coaching mentality of being there. I want to be coached. And that's the way I see that the advice is going. And coming back to like what me and my team are doing and my practice, that's where we are growing towards as well. We doing more of that, and we're also incorporating more technology and I would say social media platforms as a way to get our message out there.
Wow, there's a lot in what you just said. I want to touch on the thing that you mentioned, the mutually beneficial relationship. It's something that I definitely also believe it can't just be a one-way street when it comes to client servicing. The advisor and the client should benefit from this relationship, just like you mentioned. You grow through a coaching conversation, but the coach learns as much as the coachee. What are the things that you're doing to try and hone in on those type of skills? You mentioned the problem solving and the coaching type of things. Like when you start developing those skills, like where do you start?
Okay, so the first thing I would recommend to anyone is like never stop learning. Me and you, I know we're big fans of like learning, and I wish I adopted this mindset earlier on and, not only pick it up in my second year of work in the field, but like never stop learning. And it doesn't always have to be just the financial advisory industry. So it could be other fields or, other areas that could add value or could, influence what you're talking about. So what I do is like I read a lot of books, self-development books, and a lot of biographies, because that's, biographies of successful people is really helpful because they basically are outlining the mistakes and lessons they learned that you could perhaps use in your field or your practice, should I say. And secondly, now, don't forget about podcasts. We're doing one now, but there's so many good podcasts and content out there. Same thing goes with like YouTube and a lot of like social media content out there. There's a lot of good content out there, but 9 times out of 10, most of us go and search for the entertainment stuff and not the actual good value stuff that we can take lessons away from it. And that's the beauty of technology today, is that with technology, we have access to all of this, but 9 times out of 10, most of us aren't even tapping into it, that rich source of educational content that is available to us. So I would say, coming back to it, don't stop learning. And then with the whole coaching thing, aside from all the books, the podcasts, and the YouTube content, I would say always be, open to connecting with others and sharing ideas with other people within your industry or your field. So like Louis, what me and you do a lot, I know we see it on LinkedIn. We connect with a lot of professionals in our field, not only just in South Africa, but overseas globally, US, UK, Australia, Europe, Asia. And the benefit of that is, it's also another way of learning, is that you can learn from others what they are doing in their country that might be applicable to you. And that could also help, improve your advice process, but also your way of thinking when it comes to coaching and advising clients. And then the other option is that, and I think you mentioned it on the Next Gen Planner podcast, but like also always constantly look up, good courses and things like that might be to your benefit, that can always improve your skills, The last thing I would say when it comes to like learning and always being open to learning is always adopt the mindset of a student and being open to learn. I think a lot of us, I made that mistake in my early years, is that it's so easy to get arrogant, in a sense of like, I know everything. I'm not going to be open to learning. And you find that it narrows your thinking, which will in turn affect the advice you give to your clients and the way you grow your business. And the more you remove that human element of pride and ego aside and you open yourself to learning, it just opens so many more doors, and you start learning of like, oh, I see things from this point of view, but so-and-so shares this point, or I've learned this from this point of podcast. That's a different way of seeing things that can actually generate a better outcome for not only my business, but for my clients as well. So always be open to learning. I think that's a big step forward.
Yeah, and your website says it so nicely. You're addicted to learning. and it shows through, even the patience that you have building these skills, that relentless kind of everyday chipping away at it. James Clear talks about the power of accretion, and that kind of 1% better every day compounds over time. Just like you said, Russell, it's like an investment. You have to be putting in the work. And the fact that people are listening to this podcast means that they're already absorbing a little bit of that information. If people want to reach out to you or connect to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to reach out to me, probably the most active platform that I'm on right now on a professional point of view is probably my LinkedIn. So you can probably connect with me on LinkedIn. It's pretty straightforward, Russell Ho. I don't think there's another Russell Ho out there, but I'm probably the one, with the smiley face or the smiley picture, and then saying, turning financial gibberish or helping you hack financial gibberish into finance savvy. So, you can easily find my profile. And then that's got all my contact details on there as well, including my profile me badge and everything as well. Other than that, I'm quite active on Facebook and LinkedIn. You might find my page, Bite Size Finance, or you might find me on Instagram as Russell_Ho90. So I'm easily findable on all social media platforms. And then, there is some exciting new launches we're doing on our social media scale, but, just be a lookout for that on my LinkedIn.
Like you said, people should be able to Google you and find you easily. So
if you Google me, you'll find me basically.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Russell. I think your experience, the positives and the negatives really shines through in everything you do, and this love of learning. And really appreciate the time that you've put aside for us to have this discussion.
Awesome. No, fantastic. Thanks for having me, Louis, and also for having me and listening to me, to all your viewers. And I hope you guys can take something away from this as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Russell.
Great.
Bye-bye.